So in our first video, we're going to look at frequency distributions. When we talk about frequency distributions, what we're focused on for the most part is organizing large sets of data, numerical data or quantitative data in this case. And we're going to talk about how to set this stuff up, but let's just talk about the rules in the beginning. So you should have between 5 and 20 classes, and try and stick as close to 10 as possible because that's going to help us sort of see the shape as we go. The classes must be mutually exclusive, which means no data point can fall into more than one class, and it has to be exhaustive, which means not only can it fall into more than one class, it has to fall into exactly one class. The class width should preferably be odd, with class width being max limit versus min limit. And we'll see more of this in a second. Take a second and write this stuff down. So why do we do this? Well, it's going to allow us to organize large amounts of numerical or quantitative data. It's going to help us see the shape and distribution. We're going to talk about whether it's symmetric or skewed or uniform, and that's things we'll look at soon. It allows us to develop charts and graphs, which we've talked about. Most people like to see charts and graphs because they're easy to understand for the most part. And it will allow us to compare sets of data easily and quickly. Go ahead and write these down. So look at our example here. We have the home run hitters from the top 35 outfitters in 1986. These numbers are in no particular order, and our human brain cannot comprehend all of these numbers and get anything major out of it. But if we're able to figure out what the minimum is, in this case 5, and the maximum 40, we'll be able to go from that to help us get some organization to this. Now notice that gives us a range of 35. And if you remember from years past, the range is simply going to be your maximum minus your minimum. Well, if you take that range and add 1 to it, and that'll make more sense as we go along while we're doing that, I'll explain it. I'm dealing with the number 36. Well, to set up your class limits, to set up the number of classes that you want to ask yourself, what number goes into 36 very nicely? And we want to stick between 5 and 20, preferably as close to 10 as possible. In this case, 9 ends up looking beautiful to us. So that's why if you look down, there are 9 rows here to allow us to have 9 class limits. Well, if we have 9, 9 goes into 36 4 times, which means each one of my classes is going to have a width of 4. So now I need to set this stuff up. Well, if I'm looking at that first class, it's going to start with the number 5, and then it has to go up 4 numbers. So including 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that's how I'm going to set up my first class. Well, we talked about the idea that our classes have to be mutually exclusive and exhaustive. So whether or not somebody hit 9 home runs in one season, I have to start my next class at the number 9. Since I have to start at the number 9, and I need 4 numbers in there, I'm going to go 9, 10, 11, 12. And now I can see the sort of pattern that's going to come along here. Notice your class limits are going to go up by 4 each time because the next class is going to start at 13. And your last one is going to go up by 4. So go ahead and fill the rest of your classes in. Pause the video while you do this. So now we have all our class limits. How are we going to find our class mark? The class mark is going to be essentially the middle of the class. It's going to end up being your median between 5 and 8, if you will. So to find it, all you're going to do is add your min and your max and divide by 2. So our first one is going to be 6.5. Our second one is going to be 10.5. And so on and so forth down the list. So again, pause the video and go ahead and fill those in. And now we have our class marks, which is essentially the median or the average of the class limit, the middle of the class limit. So now what you're going to do is simply this. Go through all the numbers in the list and figure out what class they fall into. For example, I see the number 9 as my first number. So I'm going to put a little tally mark in 9. And cross it off, make sure I know I'm done with it. 14, 31, 20, and I'm going to keep going. And if you want to cross them off so you don't double anything up, go ahead and do that. So go ahead and make all your tally marks. Once you do that, come back to the video. So now we fit all our tally marks in. Frequency is just simply going to be all the numbers that go along with that. So for example, our first number is just going to be the number 4. Then we're going to have 6. then 3, and so on and so forth, right down my frequency. So again, go ahead and fill that in. Well, now the question is, what is cumulative frequency? And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's keeping a cumulative tally of how many have happened so far. So the first one is just simply going to be 4. The second one is going to be 6 added to the 4 that already exist. And then 3 more added to that. And then 7 more added to that. So as I go through that column, it's going to end up going all the way up. And since I know I have 35 outfielders, my final cumulative frequency is going to be 35. And it's going to look something like this when it's all done. In this particular case, you can notice where my cumulative frequencies are. And this tells us, for example, if we look here at the 10, there are 10 players that hit 12 or less home runs. There are 28 players who hit 28 or less home runs. So it just gives us a chance to organize this and ask ourselves not only how many fell between a certain amount, how many fell below or above a certain amount too. This is going to help us find the median also. Reminder on this frequency distribution, it's going to lead us into a histogram and an ogive in our next lesson. But all we're doing now is organizing data. Because if you go back to your original lists, we had 35 points, 35 data points that were all over the place. Now we've organized them into maybe not the greatest list in the entire world, but at least there's a lot of organization here. We're going to be able to talk about shape and distribution when it comes to this also.